The pain you feel is only a dream.
The Shining's like food. There are mosquitoes landing for blood.
You have to talk to me, Danny.
I always called it The Shining.
Oh no, Doc. You can put things from the Overlook away in boxes, but not memories.
Our beliefs don't make us better people. Our actions make us better people.
I haven't felt power like that so long.
You haven't talked since we left.
What does it mean to let go? For some, letting go is something you experience moment to moment, constantly looking for distraction from the thing you're running from. For others, to let go is just to forgive and forget and leave your ailment in your rear view. And for the rest, letting go can mean not only accepting, but embracing that immovable object in your way and learning to use it to make it serve you and others. And in the case of Danny Torrance, he'll use each of these methods when it comes time to face his past in order to save his present and future.
I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be.
In 1977, our Lord and Savior, Stephen King, wrote the classic gothic horror novel The Shining, a spooky and nightmarish tale of a typical family and their ultimate unfolding. At the center is Jack Torrance, a husband and father who takes a job working as a groundskeeper in the historic Overlook Hotel in Colorado. Throughout the story, Jack is painted to be a bad husband, a bad father, and a neglectful employee. And by the end of the story, Jack is the homicidal antagonist that haunted King's readers for years to come.
Here's Johnny!
And since the 70s, fans have wondered what became of Jack's family, his wife Wendy and his son Danny. I mean, surely witnessing someone in your family slowly descend into madness and murderous rage would have some heavy implications attached to it, wouldn't it? Well, we were left wondering this for years until King released the long-anticipated sequel novel in 2013 called Dr. Sleep.
I don't know much else, but I know that we don't end.
Dr. Sleep was a New York Times bestseller and of course went on to be adapted by Mike Flanagan in 2019. The film follows the book pretty closely and serves as a sequel to both the novel and the popular 1980 Stanley Kubrick film, The Shining. The movie takes the creepy happenings of the Overlook Hotel and places them firmly behind the movie's more central focus, which is Danny's ability to shine. It doesn't retread or play up any of The Shining's original story, but it does find a way to use the pre-established continuity to mold something completely new and equally as horrifying. And in today's episode, we're going to look at the sequel to one of horror's greatest films and determine what makes it so worthy. I'm Kier with JoBlo Horror, and you're watching Deconstructing. Danny Torrance is having some trouble letting go. Now a man in his 40s, Danny is a struggling alcoholic who is haunted by his gift and his dark past. But when Danny learns from Abra, another gifted shiner, that a group of demonic travelers led by Rose the Hat are seeking out and feasting on anyone who can shine, he'll be forced to face his past once and for all. It'll force Danny on a hero's journey to save the next generation of shiners and finally face the events of the Overlook that shaped him into the broken, hopeless, and dwindling person that he's become.
Man just living his life, trying to do his work. He gets put upon.
And as we do on this show, we're gonna break down this movie into our 4 key categories. First, we'll talk about the movie's origin, where I get into the behind the scenes of the movie and how it got made. Then we'll get into the legacy, where we discuss the lasting impact this movie has had since its release. Next up, we're gonna cover some trivia, where I give you some fun facts about the film, and then we'll close it out by discussing the movie's X Factor, where I find the small details that take this film from being a notable sequel to being a classic horror film in its own right. So, if you're ready, then keep your backs to the wall, and don't forget to drop a like on the video, and let's hit play on Dr. Sleep. Now, we really owe the existence of this movie to another Stephen King property that remains as one of the highest grossing horror films of all time. 2017's It Chapter 1. See, in 2013, King wrote the novel based on a Twitter poll he posted asking fans what they would like to read, a new Dark Tower or the long-awaited sequel to The Shining. Well, we voted, and we got that sequel, and Warner Brothers intended to adapt the book into a film within a year of its release. However, the funding for the film struggled to reach the required budget. Warner Bros. Had been working on a Shining prequel called Overlook Hotel when this came across their desk, and at the time, they were having trouble finding the money to get these things made. And if you ask me, make them all. The Shining rules.
I need a doctor.
But you know who doesn't think The Shining rules? Stephen King. In fact, when Mike Flanagan pitched his idea for the film serving as both a sequel to the novel and the movie, King declined the idea on the basis that he was so disappointed in Kubrick's original vision. It wasn't until Flanagan highlighted the iconic visuals of the movie that were now the public image of King's book. You know, things like Jack axing down the door and Wendy screaming, or Danny riding his trike down the hall in the iconic carpet patterns. These were things that people think of when they think about The Shining. So King finally agreed and said that he would just pretend that the movie wasn't a sequel to Kubrick's version.
You accept the things you cannot change.
So, after the success of It in 2017, Warner Brothers fast-tracked the production for Dr. Sleep to capitalize on their horror properties. Mike Flanagan, who you know as the incredible director behind Hush, Midnight Mass, and Haunting of Hill House, was hired to rewrite a previous version of the script, as well as lead the production as the film's director. I love Mike Flanagan, and I am so stoked that he got to do this, and he was stoked about it too, stating in one interview, "It touches on themes that are the most attractive to me, which are childhood trauma leading into adulthood, addiction, the breakdown of a family, and the effects decades later." While the film takes place in New Hampshire, filming took place mostly in Atlanta, Georgia, and the production lasted about 4 months before Flanagan began editing the film. Recasting took place for every original character, including Ewan McGregor being cast as a grown-up Danny Torrance. Although at one point, it was considered to have some original actors return to be digitally de-aged, with Flanagan deciding against it, stating that de-age technology was not quite advanced enough yet. So he decided to use look-alike actors to recreate the scenes from The Shining, and I am so glad that that's what he did. In today's world of digital cameos, I find it refreshing to just see good old-fashioned in-camera effects to create these scenes.
I think you've mistaken me for someone else.
And we have some fun facts about other hidden cameos and casting choices, but we'll get into those during our trivia segment, so don't check out just yet. Dr. Sleep had maybe the biggest shoes to fill of any anticipated sequel in the genre. Being that Kubrick's original adaptation of The Shining is easily one of the most legendary horror films ever made, this movie had to follow up the novel and the film with a fresh new story. And if you ask me, the movie does just that. This movie takes the trauma that came with the events of the first movie and carries that same DNA into something much more mystical and otherworldly.
Is that what you really think? You're gonna hurt me?
The villain of Rose the Hat deserves to be mentioned in the conversation of spookiest horror villains as well. She's played to perfection by Rebecca Ferguson, and the character is equal parts enchanting and terrifying. Of course, we also get some incredible homages and other Easter eggs to the first film, but some of my favorite are the red rum scene, the moment Danny shares with his father in the bathroom of the Overlook, and definitely the impossibly accurate performance of Carl Lumbly as Dick Halloran, who of course was made iconic by the late Scatman Crothers.
But there are other folks, though mostly they don't know it or don't believe it.
The movie attempts to bring the audience up to speed with the events of The Shining, while also working in the lasting effects that those events had. We see Danny becoming more like Jack in certain ways, while also following his gut as far away from his past as possible. And this just adds something to the film that gives you the satisfaction that any sequel should bring. The film was released just before Halloween in 2019, and it was met with decent profits right away. The film made roughly $76 million on a budget of just $45 million and was considered a moderate success. But critics loved the movie, with Rotten Tomatoes stating, quote, "Dr. Sleep forsakes the elemental terror of its predecessor for a more contemplative sequel that balances poignant themes against spine-tingling thrills." The film was also nominated for 8 Saturn Awards that year, and even won for Best Performance from a Young Actor for Kylie Curran, who plays the young lead of the film.
You tracked me down?
It was easier than I thought. Like GPS, but in my head.
Following the release, Warner Bros. Even approached Flanagan about developing a prequel film that would focus on the character of Dick Halloran. But with Dr. Sleep being only a moderate success commercially, the project was later shelved. However, King and Flanagan have both expressed interest in making a solo film for the character of Abra Stone, which would definitely be in my wheelhouse. Earlier, I mentioned that there were some surprise cameos in the movie, and while Mike Flanagan couldn't get everyone, he did manage to get Danny Lloyd, who played Danny in the original film, to cameo as a parent watching a Little League game in the movie. While Lloyd has been retired from acting for years, he was thrilled to be included in the movie as a nod to his performance as a kid. Of course, it would have been awesome to see Nicholson come back for a surprise appearance as well, but when Flanagan reached out to him, he stated that Nicholson, quote, seemed pretty serious about his retirement. Also, while Shelley Duvall is not in the movie, she did recently make a slight return to acting in the horror genre, so who knows what may come from any future stories in this franchise. And while we're on the topic of casting, let's see if you can answer this question. In an attempt to find an actor who had similar qualities to Jack Nicholson, which actors were considered to play the role of Danny Torrance in Dr. Sleep? Was it A, Billy Crudup and Jason Lee, B, Leonardo DiCaprio and Christian Slater, or C, Rory Cochrane and Daniel Radcliffe? Comment your answers down below. Now, there are so many special things about this movie that make it worthy of the praise it receives. I love the cinematography, the cold and foggy atmosphere, the slow burn intensity, and the performances of everyone involved. I almost wanted to use this segment just to talk about the concept of the story. I love the idea of King focusing on a character and their personal journey rather than making a rehash hotel of horrors that would never live up to the original work of The Shining. There's a maturity that comes with not reproducing and repackaging a successful work of art and instead daring to explore the dark and tough questions that The Shining left us with. I also considered using this segment to talk about the True Knots and how their antagonistic ways are easily one of the most engaging aspects of the film. Rose the Hat is an interesting villain as she's got this predatory vibe that sends chills down your spine, but she's also a mainly charming and good-looking person. It's very conflicting. She's a contradiction, which makes her even more frightening than we see on the surface. She's like if Peter Pan was an evil soul eater. But Rose and the True Knots aren't gonna make the cut for the X Factor. Then it hit me. This movie would never have happened without the patience, careful attention, and detailed understanding that Mike Flanagan has for the source material. It was rewritten, directed, and even edited by this one person. He truly understood the characters outlined by King in The Shining and made bold, creative choices to make the film that properly honors the merits of the original, while also forcing us to understand them the way he does.
You shine on.